Hi, everyone. Hi, Karen. How are you today?
It's good. Thank you. Yes.
Good. Thank you to everyone joining us online. I am Katie Caston. I am the Animal Assisted Crisis Response Manager here at Pet Partners, and I have one of our AACR handlers with us, Karen, today. And Karen and I are going to have a discussion about AACR and what that is and what it means to you. So feel free to put any comments you have in the chat. We will try to get to them as we go along. But Karen, how are you today?
We're good. Thank you. Trying to stay
Good.
cool down here in Texas.
Yes. And I'm actually remote in Little Rock, Arkansas, so just a little further north of you as well. So we have had a reprieve this last week from our very cold or very warm weather and had it a little cooler, about 90. So it's been good. So, Karen, tell me a little bit. We'll each share here just a little bit for those of us who are joining us online about you and your animal, and your husband is a handler as well.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about how you came to Pet Partners and your current therapy dog.
Yes. Well, I've actually been in pet therapy. oh, oh, that's a touching picture.
Oh,
Um, that's my dog Lacey. She's a silver Bouvier. She's about
oh.
4 years old, and she's actually been in therapy now she's for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Um, Very sweet girl. I have had 5 Bouviers in the
Good.
past, and they've all been therapy dogs. The Bouvier is my breed.
Mhm.
Um, and I got started way back in the late 90s when pet therapy was just beginning.
Mhm.
My father was in a nursing home, and he loved animals. And I thought, I'm going to go see if the nursing home will let me take the dog in there. And of course, at that time, it was, well, sure. They didn't ask me for
Yeah.
rabies at the beginning.
Yeah.
No, they didn't ask me if I had any registrations or anything. And at that time, when I saw all the folks brighten up seeing a dog, I was hooked from
Yeah.
the very beginning. And so I've been doing it. My first therapy dog was in like 2000.
Mhm.
Um, and I joined Pet Partners because I wanted to. The local children's hospital
Mhm.
was had registered teams there, and I did the read program and the reading program, and have done a lot of hospital work. Um,
Mhm.
and then when my husband retired, he came to me and said, "I want to do this work with you." And he has a long career history in
Mhm.
emergency medicine and working with paramedics. So that's when we decided that we wanted to do work, particularly
Yeah.
with first responders,
Mhm.
with the philosophy of, if the people know about you in your community, they'll be more apt to call on you during a
Right.
crisis.
Yeah.
So we got started in the call center here, and I just love going to the call center. About 2 years ago, our governor declared that the 911 dispatchers were first responders.
Yeah.
Um, and I have many friends. We've been at the call center now for about 5 years. And then
Wow.
in this past year, we started working with victim services at the Austin Police Department.
Mhm. Awesome. That
Yeah.
is a really long history of some very valuable work there. That is awesome.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's been wonderful. I've enjoyed. I started in nursing homes, went to hospitals, love reading with kids, and
Mhm.
working with the first responders has been wonderful also.
So I've heard you talk about nursing homes and kids. Does Lacey have one that she just adores more than the other? Does she have a favorite population, or does she kind of enjoy both sides of that?
She's only really done the first responders.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and that's her little niche.
Yeah.
So, she eventually I'd like to work at the Children's Hospital again,
Mhm.
but I'm so busy trying to keep our program going
Yeah.
that in trying to get new teams, and the
Mhm.
pandemic came in kind of in the middle, and I'm finding it a little more difficult to get new teams after the pandemic. But
Yeah.
I think all of us haven't quite, got back to normal yet.
Yeah, I think we have found too, and that, well, a lot of handlers have returned to some visiting. Not all handlers have returned to the visiting level that maybe they were doing before the pandemic.
Yes, yes.
That we are starting to recover, but we're not fully recovered from COVID, and we have seen that with national events as well.
Mhm.
So I'm going to back up just a minute, and I let you introduce your dog. I'm going to take a second and introduce my own as well before we move on to the rest of the discussion. So I am, for those tuning in online, I am a handler with Pet Partners as well, and there's my current partner, Scully, and he is a golden doodle. I have been a handler for almost 8 years now. I started with my dog Molly, who is a lab mix. They were very different dogs, and they have done both great work over the years. Both of them did. But I found one of the reasons I asked that question, Karen, was I found that, well, Molly was really, really good with older adults, and she loved to go to, went to an Alzheimer's house, and
Mhm.
she loved working with older adults. I always say Scully loves babies with his whole heart,
Aw.
and he adores visiting with younger children. So it's really been good to have both sides of that, and to kind of see where they like to visit. So
Right, right.
have you found a niche where you really like to visit? Is there a population or certain place? I know you've talked a little bit about your passion with first responders because of your family history there. Is that
Mhm.
kind of your group, or do you have other areas that you really enjoy?
Well, I have a secret.
Oh,
Uh,
on a Facebook
I,
Live is a great time to talk about secrets.
when I was in the first and second grade, the teacher used to take some of the kids in the class and have the other kids in the class work with them with reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love the reading program. That's in my heart.
Yeah.
Because it brings back a lot of memories. I love to read. I love the library. I love books. Um, and I did have a dog that was a little bit shy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
but he was okay with little humans that were up to here, to his eyes,
Yes.
and also in the reading program, uh, it was one on one for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
Yep.
Um, but it's just so sweet to walk the halls with the kids you're working on, and then all the other kids in line going to their classes and never having worked with your dog and saying, "Hi, Hansi."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So and I enjoy working with first kindergarten through third grade. Was If I was ever a teacher, that's the area I would work
That's
in.
the
But
age group.
but that
Yeah.
I love that. I love the reading program. Yeah.
Yeah, it has come to my attention just in a few minutes how many different segments of animal therapy work we have already talked about. We've talked about working with older adults and young kids, and in education settings, and in medical facilities. Um, we are here to talk about AACR, so why don't what kind of naturally falls into that, another type of work that our therapy teams do. And I know you and I are both AACR credentialed with Pet Partners. Tell me a little bit about how that process was for you, and how working what you've been doing in your local community for AACR.
Right. Um, well, because we're associated with the call center,
Mm-hmm.
what's really, I don't know how unique it is, but we work day to day on the first floor. If there is an emergency in the community, the second floor gets activated,
Right.
and
Yeah.
all different areas of the community, sheriff's department, EMS, the Department of Transportation, everybody gets involved, and it's a big, huge room with TVs, and they have meetings up there and everything. And our dogs are allowed to go up there during that time. And most of the time it's open, just like the call center, 24 hours. So, for instance, there was a young kid in town who decided he was going to put bombs in the different neighborhoods. We called him the Austin Bomber. And it was very stressful time for the whole community and the emergency first responders. So we visited during that time. And then, of course, through the snow apocalypse, when
Yes.
Texas lost all its energy.
Yes. Here in Little Rock, we were affected by that as well. It was, came all the way through here. Yeah.
So we were actually invited to go to the Austin Power, and it was very similar situation where people were sitting in front of computers in a big room, and we walked around and helped them out. And then just going back to the call center after the pandemic, trying to get them back to normal. And then our most recent call out to Uvalde. Is what we've been doing. Yeah.
So I have not been to Uvalde. I know that you have. In my experience with crisis response, have done a school shooting and responded to that with my dog. And it's difficult work. We do really important work, but it's sometimes very, very difficult. Tell me a little bit about where you're going in Uvalde and how that has been for you in your experience with that.
Well, since we've been established ourselves with first responders, we got invited to go to the hospital there in Uvalde by the Emergency Medical Task Force. And their job is whenever there's a crisis or a tornado or a hurricane, they bring in big trucks that are small hospitals, and they mobilize nurses and paramedics to bring in staff from the area to help relieve the greater need.
The burden on the medical system there.
The burden on the system and everything. And so the biggest thing that they wanted us to do was visit the emergency room, because that's where all the injured people arrived initially. And this is a brand new hospital. It's only been open 3 months. And so they had good staff, but I'm sure they were still trying to figure out the bugs in their whole system. But also my husband, through his work, is used to doing night shifts. So we put him on the task of visiting the night shift, because night shifts frequently get ignored. People do their work during the day. So we're going back. Honestly, the staff have been very resilient, and they seem to be doing okay, because medical staff, that's what they do day to day. But we want to make sure that we're going to go back and support them through the transition, particularly right before school starts again.
So for those of you listening online and maybe live or later, Pet Partners has teams responding to this, including Karen. She has helped us get some of that set up with her contacts there. We hope to have a longer term response in Uvalde that continues to support that community. We recognize that this crisis has long-term effects on their community, and hope to be there to support them going forward with this. Crises happen when tragic events happen. there's the first few days and the first few hours, but the repercussions of that incident stay with that community. And we want to continue our support to them and let them know that we are there for them through their stages of healing from this. So Karen, I know you and I both also have another deployment in common. We have both deployed there's a migrant facility that Pet Partners has been working with that houses unaccompanied minor children that cross the border. And I think you were one of the very first Pet Partners teams to go and visit there. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience at the youth migrant facility as well?
Yes. I guess, in my opinion, if you're going to do crisis response, it's a great way to get into it because it's kind of a crisis because these children have maneuvered themselves across a continent to get to a better life. And it's very stressful for them because they've left their families and such. And now they're trying to immerse themselves in a completely new culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's also the closest thing, I think, to visiting FEMA and the FEMA setups that they have during a crisis. Because it's a government run facility, and it's run by government regulations.
Yep.
And you pretty much need to follow those regulations while you're there. So like I said, I think it's a good step into crisis relief. I have had a blast going down there because it's a part of Texas that I'm a Texan. I grew up in Texas, but I never went out to West Texas and never got exposed to the oil drilling community. And there's a lot of there's a different history out there. I grew up in San Antonio and I live in Austin now. Totally different. So we have had fun seeing a part of our state that we've never seen before. But
I am coming from Little Rock where things are green almost all year round. I got to West Texas for the first time ever with Scully on this deployment. And I was amazed at how brown everything was. It's totally different. I had not expected that. It was not something I had been prepared for. I think often on crisis response deployments like this, we see things we may not have traveled to naturally on our own. Something pulls us to that community to help and to assist. And it's an education, sometimes just even landscape or geography wise as to where we are. Yeah.
Yes. But the people are so welcoming again and just love the dogs and the kids. It's a good break for them. And also one of the things that we try to focus on is teaching them about our culture and how we live with dogs. And how I think they're kind of surprised that our dogs live in our house and we try to talk to them about reaching out to dogs that they don't know and similar things you would talk about if you went to elementary school.
Right. So I think it's important to mention for our people listening at home that in this facility, they house youth primarily between the ages of 13 and 17. The facility can house up to 2,000 children. Right now, I have seen it at a few hundred, and I have seen it 1,500 to 1,000. It fluctuates greatly by day as to how many children are coming in and how many children have been placed and are leaving the facility. One thing remains constant is that nearly all of them are non-English speaking. So teams that are going have an interpreter with them. and are often visiting, sometimes with some limited verbal communication.
Yes.
And so, one thing that just stood out to me about this deployment specifically, because so many of the youth were non-English speaking, is that if you really wanted to see the power of the human-animal bond that we talk so much about in both our animal therapy work and our crisis response work, visit with a population that you don't share a language with. And you will see just firsthand how impactful your animal's presence is in that situation. It's humbling to watch as a handler, to be there with him and to see that. It's really something.
Yes. I
Yeah.
agree. Yes. And we've had to be kind of creative with the language barrier, and
Yeah.
on our phones we can go to the different translator
Yes.
apps, and that's been kind of fun. And then they see how we use our phones, and it's just there's a lot of different things you can do there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the one thing I will say, you just really have to be flexible.
Yes.
Because
So,
at 1 hour you can have 1,500 kids, the next hour you might have 800. So
yeah.
it's important that you have to be flexible if you go there.
So many crisis response deployments are like that. They change,
Absolutely.
and they change because what's happening in that environment and in that community is changing as well. So while it sometimes, we as teams that are there to help have to be flexible with what's going on, I always have some compassion for those in that crisis, because just when they kind of you start to get a little traction on healing, it changes for them too. It's an
Mm.
ever changing environment,
Right.
and us being flexible with the changes that are happening for them is really important for us being able to provide support for them
Right.
as teams. Yeah.
And the staff change a lot too, so that
Yes.
makes it a little more difficult. But I've never found a time when someone wasn't there to help me do something.
Yeah, that facility has been very welcoming of pet partners and of the help and aid that the animals have with the youth there. I've been asked to describe sometimes what it's like at that facility. And well, the children obviously are coming from a place that has been unsafe for them, that they have come here to ask for asylum and to move to the United States. And with as much trauma as they've been through, both in their home countries and getting to the United States, hearing the joy in their voices when the animals come in, and seeing the girls giggle, and it's just, giggling is the same in every language. It's the same sound. And so being able to hear that, and it's it's rewarding for me to be able to go and do that.
Yes.
And I know that Scully reacts to that as well. Um, my son is just graduating high school and has been a lifelong soccer player. We've had a soccer goal in our yard until last year, and so Scully was sort of raised around soccer balls. And so one of his places that he liked to visit actually was near the soccer field. Well, the boys are playing soccer at that facility. And I've had some handlers say that wasn't a good experience for them, because the boys running around playing soccer, wasn't a great fit for their animal. But it was an awesome fit for Scully. So he was like, this is just like every day. Every day I see this. And so even in that facility, even on that AACR deployment, there are needs for teams with that do different things. You know, there is a need sometimes for those higher energy animals and a need for those calmer animals. There's different work to be done even on an AACR deployment and on the same AACR deployment. Yeah.
And I'm grinning because all the girls do what teenage girls do. You know, they braid each other's hair and comb it and put, you know, barrettes in their hair. Well,
Yes.
one of the things they like to do with Lacey is she has a lot of hair that comes down on her side.
Yeah.
And one of our activities that gets giggles is they braid her hair on this side. And so many times I wish that I could, you know, we're not allowed to take pictures, but
Right.
there have been so many Kodak moments with little girls giggling and putting
I
bows in
know.
her hair. So,
Yeah.
you know, she wasn't real crazy about the bouncing soccer ball either, but
Right.
but getting her hair braided was really cool.
Yep. And it's so neat that we have so many different teams across the country, and big dogs and little dogs and long-haired dogs and short-haired dogs, and not even all just dogs, and the cats and the guinea pigs and the mini horses. I really want a mini horse, Karen. My husband says it's a deal breaker. I've been married about 24 years and I'm still considering the mini horse. So we'll see how that goes.
They are super cute. Oh my gosh.
And they all the different breeds of dogs and all the different species all have a place in AACR work. Just like your dog who didn't enjoy the soccer field had a place with the giggly teenage girls. My dog did very well with the soccer fields and visiting the kids. And so they all have a place. I want to address just real quick some of we've talked about all the different types of stuff that you and I have experienced, all in the different species that can do animal assisted crisis response with pet partners. Well, animal therapy teams with pet partners need to be 10 years old and up. Our AACR is for our experienced adult handlers, ages 18 and up, and with at least 6 months experience doing animal therapy work. We really feel that time that you first get started visiting is precious and special, but it's also a time where you learn a lot about both yourself and your animal. And we talked about how there might be certain populations that our animals enjoy or don't enjoy. It's important to learn that when you're going on visits and to know what situations might be a good fit for you and what situations might not be, and where's the best places for you to visit. So we ask that teams have that 6 month experience and use that time to go on 10 plus visits to kind of get experience with what their animal is really geared up for doing and what they have a passion for doing as well. We have all sorts of deployments across the country. We are hoping as we build this AACR program that we start to cultivate both local and national deployments. So as you mentioned at the very beginning, when you talked about Uvalde, that you went invited to the facility, Pet Partners teams do not go to AACR deployments without being invited, meaning that is scheduled and arranged. And we have talked to the people in that community and at that facility. They know that we are coming. They know we are credentialed. And we've provided that information and arranged that time. We don't want to provide any harm to that community, want to be there to help them, and are very cognizant that different communities in crisis have different needs. And we want to make sure that we are specifically helping that community in their needs at that time. So
yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
We're not bringing an agenda. We're helping them with whatever they need.
That's exactly right.
That sounds good.
If you are an animal therapy team with Pet Partners and you are interested in AACR, you can take the AACR course through the Volunteer Center when you log on to Pet Partners. There is a course online that you take. it actually kind of goes through visit scenarios and helps you determine what's the best way to approach people in those situations, and how to talk to people, and how to use your animal in those environments for the best help you can provide to those people. There's also an assessment that you do, similar to when you do your registration for your therapy animal team. You do an assessment of skills. You're also going to do that as well with the AACR material. Every time you renew both your animal therapy registration and your AACR credential, you'll do knowledge assessments each time for both of those. We want to make sure that every 2 years people are doing that and staying up on the skills and the education that's been provided. We also ask that teams do the FEMA incident training. There are links to that through the AACR orientation guide, which you can download from the Volunteer Center. But we want to make sure, and a lot of the facilities we visit are government related, and that if you are working with a government agency on an AACR deployment, that you know what the policies and procedures are for FEMA and are trained in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look. We are actually 2 minutes over, Karen.
Ah.
I remember asking if it was okay if we were short on our 30 minutes, and it turns out that we just blew right past that. So I see someone mentioned that they're having trouble getting renewed in certain areas. We as Pet Partners staff would love to help you with that. We have resources available. If you use the Contact Us form on the Pet Partners webpage, we would be happy to help you with that. I know you were looking there too. Karen, did you see any other questions to address specifically? If we missed something, we'll try to get back with you after the live here directly.
Does the credentialing transfer to a new dog?
Yeah, so it is handler credentialing. You will need to go in and process the AACR credential through the Volunteer Center for your animals, but it is the handler training that you're doing. You would not have to repeat the handler training for each animal. You would only need to do it once. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at my notes here real quick and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, I want to talk about one thing real quick before we go. Since we're already past the time, we'll just go ahead and cover it anyway. One of the things that I think is so important, we've talked a lot about the deployments that we've been on and how impactful they are, and those communities in crisis. But one of the things that's really important for our handlers to do, and something that actually is addressed in the AACR credentialing, but I think is so important to mention again, is self-care. We talk about self-care in our therapy animal course when handlers are going through the handler instructions on that initially, and actually ask people to think about what items they may consider when doing self-care for themselves. I personally, when I went to the migrant facility, that was a week-long deployment. And so Scully and I visited for our 2 hours in the morning. And in the afternoon, I set aside some time to do something meditative or relaxing for both Scully and I, and got some of those really nice leaded or the colored pencils with the erasers and a cute little coloring small little book. So I could do like one a day. That had some animals on it and stuff, and just an activity that was decompressing for me and stress relieving for me. Do you have something that you do for self-care that helps you after deployments like this?
I try to make sure that I've got a person that if I have an issue, I can pick up the phone 24/7 and talk to them about it. And I'm lucky. I have a husband that's working with me too, but I do have people at the call center too that that are my friends, and they know
Mhm.
when they found out we were going to Uvalde, they shoved their telephone number in my hand and said, "Call me if you ever need anything." But
Yeah.
I think having someone even at home that you can talk to, and I know that also you are also available for that
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. That's in the training.
Yep.
Um, but I think it also helps, particularly if you're going with somebody and they're in the situation and they understand the situation, just sitting and discussing it after you come back from your experience
Yep.
and saying, well, what did you think about that? And just talking.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing Pet Partners has offered for AACR handlers is a support group, a time when handlers that have gone on deployments can get together and share what they have in common and share about their deployments. Those are actually staffed by Iowa State University, or I'm sorry, Idaho State University, mixing up my I states there. And it's called Sophie's Circle. And we've had them on Fridays in the spring, and we'll be offering them again in the fall. The time may change, but we will go back to offering that to our AACR handlers. Your care and your animals' well-being are very important to Pet Partners. And while we talk heavily about being your animal's best advocate in this and other situations, I want to make sure that you're advocating for yourselves and following up on self-care. So know that that's also a resource available. Well, we are way over time. So I feel like I could keep talking to you, Karen, for another hour. But
can I add just something to the self-care? Just one
yes,
little quick thing.
yeah.
If you're going out of town, or even if you're on the other side of town, check to see where your veterinarians are,
Yeah.
because you never know when you might have a medical emergency for your pet. And this kind of work, I think one of the things, if you're planning to go and you're thinking about going, I think you just need to make sure that you and your dog are healthy enough for the
right.
travel, the stress, all of that.
Yep,
Okay, I'm
absolutely.
done.
That's good. Well, thank you all for joining us online and in the chat. And thank you, Karen, for spending your afternoon with me today. I so
My
enjoyed
pleasure.
getting a chance to talk with you.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
It's been a
Thank
lot of
you all.
fun.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Bye.